This story is in two parts. The first took place in New York City shortly after my boyfriend died. Of course I was devastated when this happened. He was to be buried in his native Ireland, but on the day of his funeral in Ireland, they had a memorial mass for him at his parish in Queens. My boyfriend always liked to hear me sing for him, so I impulsively volunteered to sing at his memorial mass. The piece that I chose to sing was Pas Jesu from Gabriel Faur's Requiem. The morning of the memorial mass, I tried to warm up my voice in my apartment, but every time I got to the words Donna es Requiem, I burst into tears. I didn't know how I'd get through singing at the mass, but it was too late to back out. All the way up to the time I walked up onto the altar to sing my piece, I was praying, "Please help me get through this. Don't let me let Jim down." And then my moment of truth arrived. Standing in the sanctuary, next to the organ, I nodded to the organist and he played the sustained one-chord introduction. I started to sing, and as I did so, I felt a presence with me, urging me on. "You can do this for Jim." Whoever this unseen spiritual supporter was, he or she helped me get through the piece without breaking down in front of the congregation. As I finished the piece, I walked off the altar, collapsed into a convenient pew, and gave vent to my pent-up tears. Fast forward to about 2 weeks ago, I was touring around Ireland with a friend, and seeing as we were our own tour guides, we followed our own itinerary. Needless to say, one of our stops was to visit the graveyard where my boyfriend Jim is buried. We had been there before, so there was not much trouble finding it again. My friend left me alone as I knelt and prayed over Jim's grave. And yes, even all this time later, I shed some tears. We loved each other very much. And then I got back into the car, and my friend and I continued on our way. My friend and I discovered a nice classical music station on the car radio, which we played when my friend felt she wouldn't be distracted by the music if she was trying to find the right road to get us to our next destination. So we were comfortably on the road again, and we decided to turn the radio on. About the second or third piece they played after we turned the radio on was the Pas Jesu from Faur's Requiem. I gasped when I heard it come on. My friend who attended Jim's memorial mass in Queens took her eyes off the road long enough to meet mine. "I don't think that's a coincidence," she said. "They don't play pieces like that very often on the radio. I think this is Jim's way of telling you he knows about your visiting his grave earlier today." I shed a few more tears thinking of Jim, but felt comforted that he knew I said an Ave for him, and that his grave is warmer and sweeter for it.
Let's not beat around the bush. Some stories should not be told. In this case, I'm not telling it, just simply writing it. I'm not saying that it's going to be scary or sinister. It won't change the mind of any skeptic, just solidify their ideas and dogmas. But I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I don't care if it's believed or not. This is just one of the many things that happened to me. This story I'm about to write is, well, the focal point of all that happened. It is my burden, and I'm still waiting for it to finish. Or, to put it another way, for the end to arrive. It will be exciting to see what happens after it. Enjoy, please. 1992. What a strange summer. I was just finished primary school and heading for secondary school. I have, by this time, had 2 encounters with the supernatural, and I was very interested in learning as much as I could about ghosts. So I set up a club called the Ghost Club / Beastly Remains. Its occupants of membership were myself and my best friend, Jonathan O'Reilly, who has sadly now passed away. This was to be his first encounter and my third. It is difficult to tell this story because an age-old innocence for him and I was stolen after this. Too much happened for it not to have drastic effects. This day, date forgotten, felt like it would never end. After breakfast, John and I went about our business of collecting clues to a case that we were working on. It had started with me a year previous, and if we had have had access to the net, it surely would have been an open and closed case. But when is anything that easy? I'm not going to tell that story. I'll save it for another time. Maybe. So after going about collecting clues, we saw a crow with a cross attaching it to the ground. It was a very disturbing image. The crow was on its back, wings extended, and a cross stuck through the middle of its chest. It wasn't a clue to the case. We just found it on our travels. But it does need mentioning, because, like I said, this day was the focal point of my experiences, and that crow was an omen of some kind. John and I headed back to his house and out into the backyard where our club's house, his mother's shed, was located. We started putting together what we had collected. We came up with no definite answer. Fed up at this stage of always coming to a dead end, I threw our findings on the ground and pressed myself into an armchair which we had taken from a skip days earlier. Undefeated, John sat next to me in his beanbag and suggested that we just head out for a walk. Not to look for anything, just walk. It was, after all, a nice day. A little overcast, but the sun came out nonetheless. John was always wondering about the things that I saw. Was actually very jealous of my talent. He would always query about how they would look and sound. Did I believe in evil ghosts? He had never understood why I thought that my 2 encounters already experienced were evil spirits. I didn't have an answer for him. All I could ever tell him was, you know how there are good and bad people? Well, why wouldn't there be good and bad ghosts? Then I felt it. Suffocated. Hot. In fact, too hot. I started to choke on emptiness. I couldn't breathe. Then, as quick as it had started, it stopped. You okay? John was standing beside me with a look of sheer fear on his face. Apparently, I started shaking and screaming. I don't remember doing either. I took a look at my surroundings, see if there was anything out of the ordinary. I was standing in the middle of a small, unused road. The factory of Martin Savage on my left, its fence bordering it, a 7-foot metal spiked guardian, and a disused cottage in front of me. Come on, sit down. I'm okay, I managed, yet my throat felt dry and scarred with heat. Let's take a look at that cottage over there. Could be fun. John didn't protest. Anything after my sudden attack was going to be a relief. We walked towards the cottage. It was like any other typical cottage, except its front door was boarded up and the windows on the front were stained and boarded up also. Come on, there may be a way in over the other side, I said. I went around the side of the house and found footing, allowing me to climb the side wall and use the factory fence as support on the way up. Once I got to the roof, John, not far behind me, I slid down to the edge and peered over. There was a window slightly open just below me. Carefully, I let myself fall over the edge of the roof. I didn't want to fall into the nettles below or break anything. Once I was on the ground safely, I pushed the window open a little bit more, just enough for John and I to enter through. Once inside, the words vice versa came to mind. In the room we were currently in, there was a ceiling and no floor, and the other room had no ceiling and a floor. By no floor, I mean that we were walking along planks of wood on their edges, with 1 foot gaps between them, and we had to be careful where we stepped in. It wasn't the most exciting place to be. The other room only had a fireplace, the front door, and 2 windows. The one facing the factory was the only one letting light into the room, so we kicked about for a bit. I took my head into the fireplace and looked up the chimney. Surprise, surprise, it was dark and dirty. "Hey, Rob, look at this." Coming out of the fireplace, I walked over to where John was standing. There was a footprint, a small footprint. You could have counted the toes, it was that clear. And blood. I looked at John in horror. He had blood on his hands. "Do you think someone was killed?" I said. John only shook his head. It actually just appeared in front of me. What? Apparently, John had been standing waiting for me to come out of the fireplace when he saw the footprint appear beside him. The blood, however, was a different story. When he had entered and I first gone to the fireplace, John investigated the room. He didn't find a lot, except for blood dripping down from the top of the window beside the only door inside the cottage. He pressed his fingers into it, thinking that it could have been rust, but learning differently, and then the footprint appeared. "Lift me up, I want to see where the blood is coming from." I put my back against the wall, joined my hands, and lifted John up so he could see above the ceiling and into the attic. No sooner was he up, he was back down. Jumped down from my hands, in fact, and took off for the window. Not being a fool, I followed example and ran for the front door, knowing it would take John longer than I cared to wait to get out of the house. Through all the excitement, I didn't hear the footsteps hobble across the opposite room's ceiling, but I did hear them fall to the floor we were currently occupying, and start to walk towards me. Without hesitation, I kicked the bottom of the front door wide open and threw myself out, scraping my back along 3 nails, and then I saw it all. The feeling from about 20 minutes before came back, but this time I could see it. I could see flames all around me, nowhere else. The room I was standing in was perfect. There were people in a panic around me. Then I heard myself screaming at them. Then it was over. The vision had stopped. It clarified what had happened earlier. The footsteps had also stopped coming towards me. I was back out on the unused road in front of the house. I waited to see John come over the roof, but he didn't. I waited and waited. It felt like hours, but in fact, it was only seconds. Then I heard John. It was the most blood-curdling scream I've ever heard. It chilled me right to the bone. Then after another minute or so, John came over the roof and slid down to the road, falling with a horrible crunch. I rushed over to see him if he was okay. He was pale white, his eyes were unfocused, looking at me, but through me. I picked him up and started to bring him home. Nothing was broken, thankfully. He had a scrape or 2, but that's it. All he could say, though, was, "Grandpa, I need Grandpa." I brought him to his granddad's house and knocked on the door. When it was finally answered, John had come round a bit, regained some of his colour. His granddad asked what was wrong as soon as I had John sitting down, so I told him everything. He was sitting in a small kitchen chair when I finished telling him. And next, he was raising his hands to hit John. I placed myself between him and my friend and screamed at him for answers. Why was my mate all of a sudden mute? What had he seen? What? His grandfather told me that about 65 to 70 years ago, he and his sister, mother, and father lived in that house. I was shocked. What had happened, however, was that his sister had just gotten a new dress and was dancing around the room, admiring it. She was 16 and very beautiful, he said. But the tail end of the dress went into the fire and she went up in flames really quickly. Needless to say, she died. And that this is what I'd seen in my vision and what John had just seen. I'm thankful that I didn't see what he saw. We left his granddad's house a few hours later. John had come back to reality and wouldn't speak of what he saw. All he said was, "It's not finished, Rob." We went back to the house. I know, crazy, right? And John said that I was to wait here. I was to wait in the middle of pitch black road while he went into the house. I protested. He just said, "Wait here, please." So I waited. Time went past very slow. It was now nearing 11 o'clock at night, and I was very hungry. Then, somewhere off in the distance, I could hear hoofbeats and the sound of a carriage. I looked up and down that road and saw nothing except pitch black endings. Yet, the noise got louder and closer. I closed my eyes and started to breathe deeply. I remembered the day and its events, recalled them in my mind, and opened my eyes. In front of me were 6 black horses, a black carriage and a black rider. They stood out against the blackness around them. I could feel the breath of the horses and the gaze of the headless rider. I knew what it was at once. The Costa Buyer, the death coach. My time was up. I cried. Then the words came out of the silence and formed in my head. In. I started to step towards the coach when the girl slipped past me and sat inside the coach. I was amazed. It wasn't for me. I was a witness. This doesn't happen. The Costa Buyer appears only to those who is taking. I was on a different level of sight. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own 2 eyes. Then it was gone, and in its place was John. He looked at me knowingly. "Let's go," he said. We went away from that house, not to return. Later, I asked John what he had seen. He didn't tell me about the girl, but he did say that I'm incredible. He had gone around the side of the house and felt sick. He vomited, and then he came back towards where I was waiting and saw what he saw. He said he saw bright white around me and nothing else. He wasn't able to take his eyes off me. I guess that was a good thing, because otherwise he would have seen Death's servant. After this day, John and I saw each other less and less. We were in separate schools, but we talked until he died. Our bond unbroken, but a rift between us that we couldn't speak of. I'm sure that the Costa Buyer will be back. This time, for me. I believe that more than I believe in anything else. So I wait and enjoy every day I live. As for the white light, that's my aura. I'm content, I've been told. The house is still there, but it has no residents. I like to walk that path every now and again. It leads down to a nice old-fashioned mill. My second encounter happened there, and an old train station. Sometimes I feel John walking beside me as I travel down that unused but scenic road. He is the best of company. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this collaboration with Trove of Terror. We also did a video together for his channel. I will leave a link in the description below so you can check it out. You should also check out his own videos. He makes some great content. I will leave a link to his channel in the description below so you can go check it out. Also, all collaboration videos that I do with other YouTube channels can be found in my playlist, Collaborations, so make sure you guys check that out. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment below. All feedback, good or otherwise, is always appreciated. If you have any creepy stories of your own, or have any topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send them in via any of my social media. You can find all links to my social media in the description below. Until next time guys, make sure you lock your doors, stay safe, and I'll see you next video.